How many times have you spent ruminating on something that you've convinced yourself is sure to happen, but in fact, never does? Instead of trusting that this might mean not everything could or will go wrong, you still assume, though, that the next time is the time and you have to stay ready. Are you as sick of that feedback loop as I am? Hey everyone, how's it going? I'm Kira Wackett. Thanks for joining me for another video as we work to empower and equip you with the confidence and skills to write your own story so that you can live your life on purpose. Today we're talking about making the shift from hypervigilance and overplanning, i.e. trying to control everything, to becoming resiliently prepared. Many of us struggle not to get bogged down in the details when we do any self-help work. There's a specific outcome and a plan on exactly how we'll get there. This isn't too dissimilar to the dreaded New Year's resolution that many of us can relate to and have found ourselves anxiously rooted to. The rigidity in the plan helps you feel in control and motivates you to do the work in front of you. There's no gray area, which in your mind means no place to get lost in excuses or sidetracked by other thoughts. You do it as expected and without fail. But what happens when you hit a roadblock or something doesn't go as expected, good, bad, or neutral? What happens if your values or goals change? What happens if something unplanned comes up that has to take precedence over your plan? And what impact does this planning have on how you spend your primary resources, time, money, and energy? The planning can become a system of suffocation that deepens your shame when things don't go as expected or your timeline or output changes. We lose sight of the process in favor of a specific outcome and focus on content versus context, value, or intention. Let's take this one step deeper. Maybe it's not about the goal this time. Instead, we're thinking about expectations and norms. Now, if you're watching my channel, you've permitted yourself to name the fact that you, like everyone else, struggle with shame, which automatically means that our expectations and norms are going to be skewed in favor of self-deprecation and negativity. We assume bad things can and as such will happen, and we're responsible for managing them. We spend hours thinking about how to deal with the uncomfortable family get-together next month. Oh gosh, what might they say? What am I going to say back? But what if they do Y? And how can I deal with X? What's my exit strategy? And we get lost in pain merely in anticipation of something happening. Or maybe you're about to get on an airplane for the first time with your little one, and you're frantically trying to control and plan for everything that could go wrong. What if they cry? What if they're scared? What if they can't get their ears to pop? What if people on the plane are annoyed at me or annoyed at her? What if I don't bring enough snacks or stuff to do? What if she doesn't nap or have a bathroom accident? The what ifs are endless. And yes, that's a very real example from my not too distant past. In these scenarios, our attempts to plan for everything that could happen result in two things. One, it expends a significant amount of energy on the front end for things that may not even occur, which means you have less energy on the back end to deal with what actually happens. And two, it primes your brain to be in a state of hypervigilance. The outcome is the same whenever we get too specific or try to plan for too many details. It kicks up our anxious response, and going back to point number one, expends a significant amount of energy on something that may or may not happen. One of my favorite TED Talks was given by Loretta LaRoche. She talked about this concept as creating double suffering, wherein we spend all of this time creating suffering in the what ifs and rumination, thinking that it's going to stop us from having pain and suffering when and if something does happen. It doesn't. See, we still feel stress, pain, frustration, only now we have fewer resources to deal with it in the moment. This is called overplanning, and you're right, it looks an awful lot like rumination and perseveration. That's because it is. Overplanning is just the future-specific process. It's an outcome-assumed response that leads to defensiveness, reactivity, exhaustion, and rumination. This has made it so you get stuck in your goals or become so overwhelmed at the onset of a goal or possibility that you take yourself out of the running to begin with. This makes you feel exhausted and fixated on the negative or what doesn't go right. It keeps you locked in that drama triangle, playing the hero, victim, and villain, or assuming that you're responsible for and control everything while also getting lost in the pain of feeling like you can control nothing. And we can all agree that doesn't seem to be working out for any of us. Opposite to this response is preparedness and resilience. Preparedness is about considering possibilities, outcomes, or goals, and then establishing a sense of readiness. It's not about knowing what will happen, but trusting that you can handle it when it does. It requires self-efficacy, flexibility, and an ability to make both preemptive and adaptive decisions. Resilience is the ability to adapt to changing conditions and bounce back quickly and effectively from disruptions, unplanned interruptions, and emergencies. To be clear, it doesn't mean that we need to be fine all the time. It means that once you can address whatever circumstances or experience come up, thoroughly, effectively, all that you need, you can stay the course and not get lost in the pain, trauma, and grief. Now, while research has shown us that some aspects of resiliency are genetic, we know that there are opportunities to develop and deepen resiliency in our daily practice, and as such, aim to build on this here. Now, both preparedness and resiliency involve planning, and that we need to generate insight, develop skills, set preemptive boundaries to support us in our work, while shifting the focus from the content or outcome and allowing more space for the process. Ultimately, they're about rooting to your values, norms, and expectations, rather than anchoring on external factors, shame, and validation. This is our goal. But how do we make this shift? Step 1, get clear on your relationship with control. Where and what do you try and control? Where do you feel out of control? And where do these stories come from? Why is this creating stress or pain for you? Step 2, dive deeper into understanding your shame. As you think about control, we can't not explore shame. Shame, or the fear of not being worthy of love, connection, or belonging, drives us to try and control, perform, and manipulate outcomes to protect against or counteract anything deemed a risk to our standing and acceptance. So what is your shame story? What rules and fears guide you? Step 3, look at how you spend your time, money, and energy, and how this connects to the information in steps 1 and 2. How much of what you do, think, and purchase relates to shame? How much of it is an attempt to control an image, outcome, or perception? What comes up for you as you name this? And what do you want to do about it? Step 4, define your goals. As you think about the work you want to do or changes to be made, get clear on the what, why, and how. It's also imperative to be able to name and connect your goals to your values, so spending your time defining those can be valuable as well. Step 5, learn to assess rather than assume risk in stressful situations. Change is scary. It makes sense that you'll be nervous when you want to try and do hard things. There's a benefit in preparing for things that can happen, but assuming things will happen changes the way that we engage with situations and relationships entirely. List all the what-if fears you have about whatever situation is in front of you, and then ask yourself, how likely is this to happen? Is that the only possibility? If it does happen, is it in your control or your responsibility? Has there ever been a similar situation and when this didn't happen? And would you be okay if it did? Step 6, get clear on what it is that you actually can control. Using a control wheel, draw a circle on a sheet of paper. Each time you find yourself in that hypervigilant, overplanning headspace, sit with this sheet of paper and put inside the circle everything that's in your control and outside of the circle everything you can't. From there, practice radical acceptance and release the pieces outside of the circle and draw your focus inward. What changes for you when you do this? Step 7, determine who you want to be and how you want to move forward. Most of us don't like that hypervigilant headspace. We may feel a sense of comfort there, but it isn't a destination we seek. How would you like to handle this situation? If your life was a movie, how would you want to write the scene? And what has to change to allow you to show up as that person and in that way? Step 8, see your fear as a tool rather than an enemy. By seeing fear as an obstacle to overcome, suppress, or defend against, we dismiss all the beauty and wonder fear provides. Fear is a physiological state that allows us to sense when things are off, wrong, or simply new. It gives us essential body cues when something might be dangerous. It's the sensation that triggers those spidey senses we have all felt at some point on the back of our necks or in different parts of our body. And it's there to signal when we're doing something that expands outside of our comfort zone. Fear is something to be worked with, nurtured. When you notice it, don't try to ignore it or just hand it the keys. Acknowledge it, reflect on what brought it here, and ask yourself if this is a fear that signals true danger or a fear that signals a possible threat. Step 9, practice distress tolerance. Welcoming fear in means that you're going to allow yourself to feel your emotions more directly and intentionally. And like a good and bad pain with working out, some fear, distress, anxiety, and overwhelm is a good thing. Learning how to differentiate this for yourself and then practicing how to manage the distress without succumbing to the fear or shame-based response is key in helping you continue moving forward, or in some cases, not doing something or moving forward and staying in the driver's seat of your story. And finally, step 10, go forward. Stop talking yourself out of the work. Do the thing, make the change, and be sure to note when what you fear doesn't happen and what it's like to see your fear brain isn't always right. And when what you fear does happen, notice that you're okay. Now, this work is never going to be done. You'll constantly find new barriers or invitations to avoid or sit in shame. There'll be pushes of motivation and wavering self-efficacy. That's normal. Shifting to a mindset of being resiliently prepared is about radically accepting all of that and knowing that even if you don't have all the skills, tools, or supports, when and if something happens, you do have the right and ability to seek them out and deserve to move through and past pain and hard times. Now, with that, we are a wrap for the day. Be sure to share in the comments what you're taking away from this video and any other insights and ahas that you can share to add more to this conversation. Be sure to check out the show notes below for links to resources that I put down there to help you dive deeper on these topics. And if you haven't yet, click the link in the show notes to become an AR Insider and get in the know on all things happening in Adversity Rising and access to exclusive content I don't share anywhere else. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up and be sure to share it with someone else that you think could benefit from the message. And if you want to stay in the know on all of the new content on YouTube, click that subscribe button. Thank you so much for being here with me today. It is such an empowering place to be to start to think about those mindset reframes. And we know that this work is easier when we build community and collaboration around it. You are the author of your story, and it is time that you take that pen back. I'll see you next time.